Hello everyone. So today we're going to be going over the upper extremity arterial system. And our objectives are going to be trying to find where every artery is by locating them and putting them into groups. For me, I like to put them into compartments like how we did with nerves to better sort them out and memorize them. As we start, we both know that uh, bilaterally the arteries are the same. The only difference is that the heart, the subclavian artery from the right side, it's going to be originating from or branching from the brachial-acromial trunk, whereas the right subclavian artery or the left subclavian artery is going to be coming from directly from the aorta. Okay, and one thing you can remember is the ABCs with the S, and it's going to be the arch of the aorta, brachial-acromial trunk, left carotid artery, and then left subclavian artery. And you'll see a picture right here for the heart. And then as we move to the shoulder right here, we'll find that we'll see the subclavian artery up here, and it's going to be branching down into the axillary artery. And a tip that we know to locate each artery is that they have distinct boundary points, and then it changes the name of the artery. So for example, the axillary artery begins at the first rib, after the first rib, and then after the teres major, it's going to be forming into the brachial artery. So that's how it just changes names like that. And then back to the axillary artery coming down here, you'll see brackets, and then we'll find that there's 3 parts and 6 branches in total. How I like to know each branch, and it's easier by just corresponding the number of branches to the number of parts. So for example, if the first part would only have 1 branch, the second part would only have 2 branches, the third part would only have 3 branches, and then that's it. So for the first part, it would be the superior thoracic artery. The second part would be the thoracoacromial artery and the lateral thoracic artery. The third part being the anterior and posterior circumflex humeral artery and the subscapular artery. And then I just put another branches for the subscapular artery, which is the thoracodorsal artery and the scapular circumflex artery. So that's everything that's going to be supplying the shoulder. And then as we go down, we're going to be seeing the brachial artery right here. For the anterior view, since this is the right arm, it's going to be splitting into 2 major arteries into the forearm, which is the radial artery and the ulnar artery. I didn't draw it, but on the posterior side of the humerus, we'll go down here to the behind the brachial artery, the posterior side, which will be the profunda brachii, which is also another term for deep brachial artery, and it's going to be splitting into the middle collateral artery and the radial collateral artery. Another posterior branch for the brachial artery is going to be the superior and inferior ulnar collateral artery. And that should be it for the shoulder and supplying the arm as well. All right, guys. So far we went over the shoulder and the arm for the arterial system. Now we're moving down distally at the end of the humerus and towards the hand. So what we know so far from the brachial artery is that it forms into the profunda brachii, the radial artery, the ulnar artery, and the superior and inferior ulnar collateral arteries. And before we get into the forearm arteries, we'll see that the radial collateral artery is going to be forming into the radial recurrent artery, then forming back, branching into the radial artery. And the same thing on the ulnar side, you'll see that the superior and inferior ulnar collateral arteries are going to be forming into, right here, the anterior and posterior ulnar recurrent arteries, back into the artery, or the ulnar artery. Okay, now we're at the forearm, and you'll see that these vessels will be forming from the cubital fossa. Again, as we go down, we'll see that the radial artery is going to be going straight to the wrist, but we'll see here from the ulnar artery that there's going to be a branch before we get to the wrist, and it's going to be a bunch of interosseous arteries. And for example, it could be the common interosseous arteries going down to the posterior and anterior interosseous artery, and the recurrent interosseous artery, all forming to that. So as we go back down to the hand, it's going to be a little bit more complicated just because there's a bit more branches and little things that you need to know. But we'll start off with the ulnar side for the ulnar artery. You'll see that in the blue. I try to make it easier for you guys, but for the superficial palmar arch, you'll see right here the blue line going across the digits. And then it's going to be forming into the common palmar digital arteries, which you'll find them in complete anatomy. I saw that it's near the proximal phalanges of digits 2 to 4. And then as we go back further distally, the proper palmar digital arteries is going to be going down to the tips of the fingers. That's the ulnar side for the palmar side. Now, the radial artery, as we go down to the wrist and hand, we'll see that there's going to be the princeps pollicis, which you'll find is on the the medial side of the thumb, supplying the thumb. And then we'll see the deep palmar arch as well as a palmar arch in the ulnar side, but it's going to be deep. You'll find it across the digital arteries, or the digits. And then you'll see that the radialis indicis is going to be supplying the lateral side of the second digit, or the index finger. Okay, and then as we flip our hand over, I didn't draw a dorsal side of the hand, but you can imagine that there's going to be common arteries forming from the radial and ulnar arteries, and that's going to be the dorsal carpal arch, and then forming into the dorsal metacarpal arteries, and then the dorsal digital arteries of the hand. So you could just see that it's going to be going from proximal to distal, and it's going to be supplying the dorsal part of the hand. Okay, that should be it for the upper extremities of the arteries, but you should be aware that there is a lot to learn, so maybe making a tree like this is best to help you in memorizing and help you kind of sort things out. Also, just grouping things together will make it easier. That's my only tip, unless you guys have like mnemonics that could be helpful for the group. But yeah, this is the upper extremities arterial system. Thank you.